Oh my God. Hello. What? Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome, Emil. There was just a crazy alert that went off on my phone right when I pressed going live that was very jolting. So, yeah, here we are. Apologies if you heard the noise. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Hi, J.E. Really excited for our live stream today. And welcome, however you're joining, wherever you're joining from. Yeah, this is a special live stream that I get to do once a year because my sugar-free anniversary only happens once a year. So here we are. I'm super excited to be here with everybody. So wherever you're joining from, whatever place in the world, time of day, platform, place you're coming from, if you're sitting in your home or elsewhere, welcome. Hi, Andrea, great to see you. April, hi, wonderful to have you here, and thank you. So, yeah, there's some alert system happening with the government here. So I'm in Mexico. So yeah, buenos dias, buenas tardes, and welcome. So if you're here for the first time, please say hello. If you're joining, I know some of you have already said hello, and I know some of you very well. Everybody's welcome. And again, wherever you're joining from, my intention for this live stream today is for it to be helpful and beneficial for you. That if the title grabbed you, Finding Freedom from a Sugar Addiction, my 5 years sugar-free journey, or if you're just in my community and joined because of that, very grateful to have you here. So if you do feel called to say hello and you are new, you can do so, or even you can give an emoji in the comments if that also resonates. So just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Natalie, Insight Timer teacher, spiritual life coach, Reiki master teacher, ancestral clearing practitioner, and I'm also a person in long-term addiction recovery. So in 1999, I got clean and sober through 12-step programs. And I also now have 5 years sugar-free. So welcome, Karen. Nice to see you. Welcome, Kay, to the community. Glad to have you. So today what I'm going to be talking about is first the way things were for me before 5 years ago in the realms of sugar. In my relationship with sugar, we're going to get down and dirty. I'm going to share what it was like. So those of you who may feel you could have a problem with sugar, you might find that you identify with me, which is very helpful because, in things like this, we can feel so alone and shameful about our relationship with whatever the addictive thing may be. And in this case, it's sugar. So I'm going to share really honestly what that was like for me. And then what happened 5 years ago that had me be able to shift and give it up one day at a time, and what it's like now. So, yeah, welcome Judy, and welcome back Lotus. Thank you. Ooh, wonderful. 24 hours sugar-free. Thank you so much for sharing that, April. And the thing is, I also started with 24 hours 5 years ago. We all start with that. We all start with 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, and on and on. And that's the beauty of sharing from a place of experience with this, is that I get it. I have been in your shoes. I have been 24 hours sugar-free, and now it's 5 years. So the beauty and power of that is it gives hope that if I can do it, so can you and anyone else that cares to. And, this journey isn't for everybody. And some of you may be here out of curiosity. Maybe sugar hasn't consumed your life or become a full-blown addiction, and you're also welcome. So I'm going to be sharing, again, a bit of my journey. And then also for those of you that are here because you're curious, and oh, awesome, Kay, another person with 24 hours. So if you're in that place, I'm going to give a simple way to move forward. And then also, if anybody's interested in having support, I do offer that in the work I do one-on-one. So feel free to reach out if that's interesting to you. Yeah, and there's many resources and ways to do it. And I do want to say I speak for myself in my journey. I'm not saying this is the only way, and I'm not saying it's the best way or that I'm perfect or anything like that. I have found, what works for me. And so I can share that with you. And yeah, sugar is such a problem, and it's become so normalized in our society and in our world. Type 2 diabetes has become almost like, oh, well, it's just part of getting older. And that's actually not true. It's because of the way our food system is set up, the normalization of, things like type 2 diabetes or, obesity and things like that related to diet. And of course, then it's part of a bigger picture of the corporations that are pushing the drugs, if you will. And I don't want to get into that part of the picture, but just to say, it makes sense that we are where we are in the world with this epidemic. It is an epidemic, and it's a very normalized one, and it makes sense, and it doesn't have to be that way. And when we change within ourselves, we vote with our currency, our dollar, our peso, whatever currency you're in. And so, 5 years ago, the big food corporations lost one of their best paying addicts. I have not bought any ice cream or cookies or cakes or desserts or candy in 5 years. So the more of us that make that shift and don't pay with our dollars, it does make a difference, right? So even if we think about the organic food movement, that started from people wanting something different and not spending money on conventional foods, and consumerism works in that way. So that applies here too. So just to say all that. Hi, Lady Peacock. Thank you. So I would like to ask you all, and I know a number of you have already shared, and appreciate hearing from you. Are you here because you're curious about your own relationship with sugar? Are you here because you have a problem, and maybe you're in the place of, I know I need to stop, but I can't. I don't know how. It's overwhelming me. It's taking over my life. Or are you in a place, maybe you're like affected by somebody else's sugar habits, or maybe you're here just because you follow me and you just like being live here with me. So give one word in the comments or more of what has you here right now. So, hi Rose. Hi Umu, pre-diabetic. Yeah, so the good news is, and of course I'm not a medical professional and I can't speak from that way, but just generally, if there's a pre-diabetes that is diet related, this is a great place to be and to be in this conversation. And there's a lot of hope. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rose, Andrea. Always love being with you and having you here. April, so also pre-diabetic, insulin resistant. And again, there's a lot of hope here. The thing with making a change, especially if it's one where you do identify as having a problem or even maybe an addiction, it's super common and natural and normal that the mind will think about what I'm giving up, how hard it's going to be, no more of my favorite sweets. Oh my God, it's so hard, or I've tried so many times. And it's super common and natural to have those trains of thought. And what I want to invite people to, if you are in that space of, oh my God, what am I giving up, to what am I gaining? What will I gain? What is the positive result of me changing my relationship with food and sugar and giving that up? JE just gave up sugar years ago. And, wherever you are, however you identify, you're welcome here, and there'll be something of value. Amazing, JE. I wish that I was like you, but I'm not. Hi, Sandra, another person with pre-diabetes. So glad you're here. Thank you, Lady Peacock. Welcome, Trish. So just to briefly share my own story. Again, I come from a background of addiction with alcohol and drugs and been in recovery since 1999 from that. I quit smoking cigarettes actually 24 years ago this month. So to me, that's when things changed. I'd gotten clean and sober. I quit smoking after about a year and a half sober. And at the same time, I had this boyfriend who was a sugar addict. We'll just call it what it is. So it was like this perfect storm of quitting smoking, which of course we all know. And if you've done it or you've seen others, it's like there still needs to be something. Instead of a cigarette going in the mouth, it becomes food for many, many people. And it became sugar for me. So it just naturally started happening. I started eating sweets and desserts when I never did before at night, like every night. And it just went from there. I just want to read some of these comments here. So Lotus, that's a great point to bring in. So they're saying they've been able to be sugar-free for many months, but then fall into temptation. Who else can relate to that? So it's not about stopping, it's about staying stopped, right? It's about over a long period of time, can you stay stopped? And Karen fell off the wagon a bit, so I hear that same story there. Started in May, fell off the wagon a bit, so again, that back and forth thing. And so that, for some of you, if you don't identify as somebody that's addicted to sugar, you may be able to moderate and control it and have a relationship with it in that way. For me, I can't even speak to that. I am an addict. It's either all or nothing. So I cannot moderate, I cannot control. So, since the early 2000s up until 5 years ago, the pattern was on again, off again. And it got worse over time. So one of the hallmarks of addiction is, you have to use more and more to get the same result, to get the same fix. And then cravings develop and tolerance develops. And sugar is a drug. They have proven that it is a drug in the body. There has been research that it's more addicting than cocaine. That it hits the same brain receptors that cocaine hits, and that it creates that same scenario in the body and the brain. So it can be a literal physical addiction. Yeah, so J.E. saying the idea of being able to have it occasionally. And again, for those of you that can do that, I wish I was you. I am not one. And I proved that over 20 years-ish. So I would go from just being full on every night, sweets of some kind, and then I would say, this is it. I can't do this anymore. Either I gained weight, or I know when I was married, my ex-husband and I shared very similar habits, of which that was one. And, what I remember about that was being married and just the irritability. Oh my God, can anyone relate to just noticing a ton of irritability when you're eating sugar all the time? Or maybe you don't even notice it because it's been so long standing for you. But that's one thing I really noticed from my marriage at the time was if I was off sugar, I was way much more easygoing and peaceful. And then if I got back on sugar, oh my God, I would be so irritable and take it out on him all the time. And then when he also was on sugar, it was even worse because then we're both doing that. April identifies it being an addiction for them as well. Totally get it. So, over the years, it would just be this back and forth, off and on. I'd do different things. I'd try different things. And then for me, the weight was piling on. So I gained a lot of weight. Can anyone relate to having weight gain? Another thing that happened, and I was in my mid-30s at this point, which has now been quite a long while ago. I became hypoglycemic. So I would, and again, I'm not a medical professional, but to me, like hypoglycemia is the precursor to prediabetes, which is the precursor to diabetes. So because I was ingesting so much sugar, my body got to where it would send out too much insulin that then it was not in the right balance. So then it would create, this sugar crash, a few hours later, I would get shaky. I would feel like I needed to eat something. I just felt unstable. And I figured out, it took a while, that it was hypoglycemia. Yeah, so that was a big deal because as I said, like I was in my mid-ish 30s and I'm starting to have this hypoglycemia out of nowhere. Things were really desperate for me at that time. In my marriage, it was this dynamic of, I admitted I was an addict. I admitted I was addicted to sugar. And so then, and because of my moods and things, somehow it came up of like, I need to stay stopped. And I remember then I was hiding it from my husband. Maybe I'd stop for a bit, but then I'd secretly start up again. And I was hiding it just like an addict with alcohol or drugs. I was hiding my sugar from him. So then I had that all going on, the shame and the guilt and the remorse and the hiding, hoping I don't get caught and found out. And I remember looking up a treatment center for, food addiction because I was so desperate and I did not think I could just stop. It just felt hopeless. So fast forwarding in time, life changed, things happened, got a divorce, moved overseas, but this pattern followed me. And again, there would be periods where it wouldn't be so bad, but it would always revert back to being really bad and being every day and all of that. So coming to the end of hopefully, my last bottom, it was in COVID. And COVID didn't have anything to do with it. This is just when it happened. And I was living in Thailand. And again, I don't know why it started getting so bad other than that's what happens with addiction. One of the hallmarks of addiction is it never gets better. It only gets worse over time. There needs to be more of the drug, more sugar. There's got to be more. The consequences are worse. The shame is worse. It doesn't even, quote, work anymore. And for me, the cravings, I think the cravings and the obsession were the worst part, and then the shame. So I remember, over 5 years ago now, I got it in my head, it just was getting worse, it's time to stop, I've got to give this up, I've got to stop. And I would try and be like, today is day one. This has to be day one, because the binges were getting worse and worse. So I'd wake up, I've got to stop today. I can't keep doing this. And I would mean it, and I would believe my words, and I would feel so desperate. And then at about 2:00 in the afternoon, cravings would start, the sugar cravings. And those cravings would then drive my thoughts. I would feel this craving. And then I would think, oh my God, how am I going to make it through not eating the sugar when I have this craving? And then I would internally within myself give up. I would break my promise to myself. It would barely be conscious, but I knew that I was going to have sugar that night. And even though I hadn't had it yet, just knowing that I was going to gave me relief. Gave me relief in that moment of I know, oh God, okay, I know I just have to hold on a few more hours. And that made me feel better. Some comments came in that I didn't see. Yeah. So I'll get to your question, Rose. It just popped up now for some reason. About like, because a lot of people ask, what to have, what not to have, etc. So then I would have the sugar that night. And then the next morning it would be the day one again. So what I realized at that 2 p.m. time, like that was the critical moment where I gave up, where I broke my word to myself, where I gave in and knew that I was going to have sugar again. And so what I noticed is that willingness, I lost my willingness. So that word willingness was so important, because in the morning when I woke up, I was willing to not give in and not have sugar that day. But I lost the willingness. And it was in a moment. It was this almost subconscious, subtle shift. And those of you that can't maybe identify with sugar, you might be able to with other things. If it's shopping, Amazon, sex, food, porn, a person, alcohol, drugs, whatever, right? So you can substitute whatever it is for you. But there's this moment that would happen. And I realized I lost the willingness to stay stopped. And so what I started doing was praying for willingness to higher power, God, source, universe, whatever that is. You can use whatever you want if you want to try this, because this is what worked for me finally. Every morning I started waking up and I just prayed, please give me willingness to stop today. Help me, God, help me stop. Give me willingness to stop. I was praying this every morning desperately. And I can't remember how long it took, but at some point, I remember I woke up very clearly and there was willingness present that wasn't there before. There was this, what I call a window of willingness that just was different. It was different this time. And that became my day one. So in the moment, it was like there was a commitment that was able to be there because the willingness was there when it wasn't before. I just couldn't do it anymore. And so that became my day one. So from that day forward, I haven't had any sorts of sugary, desserts and sweets and things like that. So, for those of you that are here because you may have a problem or an issue, like my question to you is, are you ready? Are you ready to stop? Are you willing to stop? And this isn't about like, if you're not ready, then that means you're wrong and bad. It's good information, right? And if you're not ready, that's totally fine. Just know, like, even with this conversation today, things will be different moving forward, because you can't unsee something that, you've seen. And in AA, we call it, like if somebody joins AA and they quit drinking for a while and then they go back out and start drinking again, it ruins your drinking, we say, because you have a head full of AA and a belly full of booze. So to modify that for this, to have the head knowledge of what's actually going on and being really honest with yourself about it, not being in denial anymore. But then if you keep indulging, you can't go back to like sort of a blissful unawareness or an unawareness to a certain degree, you will have that awareness of what you're doing, which makes it more painful, which is good, because that means, things will change. So, for those of you that do think you do have like a real addiction, that means you can't control or enjoy it. Or you can't control and enjoy it. How many of you can relate to trying to control it? And maybe you can control it, but when you're controlling it, you can't enjoy it, right? Because if you're controlling it, it's like, okay, I'm going to have 2 cookies today and that's it. And maybe you have the 2 cookies, but afterwards you feel so unsatisfied, you feel even worse than before, and then you're just in obsession, and there's no peace, right? And maybe you do that for a few days or a week, but you're totally stressed. Or maybe you're just like, screw it, I'm just gonna enjoy it, I'm gonna have whatever I want. But then you can't, because you have all the awareness inside of your head. So you can't really enjoy it. So there's never a place of controlling and enjoying at the same time. That's missing. So that's the great illusion that we have. And for those of you, and I know a number of you mentioned, like, falling off the wagon or being sugar-free, but then going back, or having the temptation and giving in. What led you to go back? What thought did you believe that made you think it'll be different this time? Because that's what happens, right? We think it'll be different. We think, oh, because I abstain for a week, a month, a year, now it'll be different. Now when I indulge, I'll be able to control it and manage it and enjoy it, because I've proven I can go without for so long. But that's the thing, if you have an addiction, you'll never be able to control and enjoy. Maybe for a brief period, there might be an illusion of that, where you are like, oh, look at me, I only had, a small bowl of ice cream and it seemed okay. But if you have a real addiction with this, that is going to be short-lived. And eventually you're going to go back to as bad as it was right before you stopped the last time. And that's what I had to prove to myself over and over for almost 20 years, or more than 20 years. So if you are on the fence, if you're questioning, if this is you, there's a line from the book Alcoholics Anonymous that I always like to quote here for anybody that might be wondering. So it says, if, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if once you start, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably addicted. So I'll say that again. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if once you start, you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably addicted. So if you honestly want to quit and you can't, or you do the experiment again of trying to manage and control and find you can't over a period of time. So that's the thing, we lie to ourselves. We say, oh, well, look at me. I could have 2 cookies once a week for a month, or every day only 2. I can do it. So let me reward myself. Now I can have 5. So April can relate. Lotus, I'm so glad you said that, because so at one point in the past 20 something years, I was sugar-free 2.5 years. Before this 5 years, another time, I was sugar-free 2.5 years. And guess what? I got the flu. I was at my mother's house. I was sick. My throat was achy and scratchy and sore. I went to her refrigerator and her freezer, and guess what I saw? A half a pint of sorbet. And I thought, oh, my throat hurts and I'm sick, and this is the perfect sick comfort food thing. And I've been sugar-free 2.5 years. I can have this one time. And guess what? The one time. So what happens is I had it the one time. And then I was like, wow, I was able to do it. I was able to have it just once. A month later, wow, remember, it's been a month since I've had it, and that experiment went so well. I could do this again. I could have it one more time again. And what happens for the addict is those time periods get shorter and shorter. The experiments work so well. I got away with it. And then eventually I'm back to every day, every night, horrible, horrible binges. So just like for me with alcohol and drugs, it's 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. If I have 1, it's too many, because it sets off this chain of events to where eventually 1,000 is never enough. So I can't safely have it at all in any form, because it opens the door on this whole scenario. Hey, Stephanie. That's great that you have substitutes, and you don't tend to overeat those. For me, I can't even do that, because it's about that there's this sweet, indulgent treat that I'm using in the same way. And that's off limits for me. If that works for you, that's awesome. It reminds me of, so in AA, of course, there's non-alcoholic beer. And in AA, we say non-alcoholic beer is for non-alcoholics. And there's even been studies done that show stevia, xylitol, things like that hit the same places in the brain and act like sugar in the brain. So for that reason, I don't advocate that sort of a thing, and I don't, everybody gets to find out what works for them. And Trish, that's a really great point. Life gets crappy and I deep dive into the crappy food. So that speaks to what's underneath this, quote, addiction. It fills something in us emotionally. Now, once the addiction's off the ground, it becomes a physical thing. Like the physical sugar cravings were crippling for me and terrible. And, before that, maybe when somebody's just doing the experiment of trying to have it again and seeing if they can get away with it or be successful in their moderation, there's usually either a stress that happens, a bad day, life gets crappy, I feel bad, or a celebration. Ooh, it's Friday. Ooh, it's my birthday. Ooh, it's my coworker's birthday. Ooh, it's Christmas Day or Halloween. So it could be either things are bad, so I need it, or things are great and I'm celebrating with it. Hi, Rochelle. And Rachel, hello. Yeah, or I've earned it, I deserve it. So there's so many pitfalls. Or yeah, I've lost weight, so let me reward myself. So if you can identify with this, and if you are ready, I'm going to give you a really simple first step that you can take. It doesn't mean you have to quit. And those of you that are at 24 hours, great, this might be perfect for you, and you're all welcome wherever you're at. And if you choose to do this exercise, this is a great place to start, because I'm not saying, it doesn't mean you have to actually stop or do anything about it. But if you were to stop, you could make this list. So I am going to give you a very simple practice exercise you can do. So if you want to do this, you can. And in my sugar addiction coaching that I do one-on-one with clients, this is, one of the first things we do. I want you to write a list of all of the things, the foods that are drugs for you. All of the things and you've experimented with time and time again, and you cannot have just one successfully over a long period of time. Because that's the trap. We think, oh, well, I did have just one piece of candy. But have you been able to do that over a long period of time without it going downhill and snowballing? So make a list of your drugs. You can get specific, you can list the brands, whatever, or you can just be general. For me, it's general. Cookies, cakes, ice creams, cupcakes, brownies, pies. So this is a really helpful exercise because you have something very tangible in black and white to start from. It's very clear. So if you relapse in your addiction, if you have a slip, you will know because you would have eaten one of those things on I call it your red list. So the red list is it's like a stoplight. A red list is stop. No. Don't do it. Can't have. So those things are your drugs. You can't safely have them in any form at all. And if you have just one, you have slipped and you need to start over. Or if you have one and you just kind of let things be, you've opened the door, and at some point you're going to be back at your worst. So Rochelle, this is such a great question. I'm so glad you asked this. And Rochelle said, what do you eat for a reward instead of sugar? You don't use food as a reward, Rochelle. You don't eat anything as a reward. Food should not be a reward. So now we're getting to the underlying reasons why we do that? So that's a beautiful, powerful question. I'm so glad you asked. Food is not a reward. So I wrote a post. It's my second highest liked post on my social media. 500 and something likes, hundreds of comments, I think 100 shares. And in that post, and I can share it if you send me a message, I say it in there, and what happened with me. Food is just food. Food is just food. And that's what happened. It went into its rightful place. It doesn't mean that we deprive. It doesn't mean that we eat straw and water. Straw and water means deprivation. We don't deprive, but we don't use it in emotional ways. And ultimately, even beyond that, the solution is a spiritual solution. It's a spiritual solution. So we turn to God, universe, source, higher power as our nourishment or as our reward or as our comfort, rather than going to a substance, whether it be food or sugar, or a behavior, whether it be scrolling or shopping or any form of obsession. So, that's the ultimate place where we're going with this discussion. And then that's when we zoom out and it becomes, more of a global conversation, because we all have these tendencies. I'm zooming very specifically into this little world of sugar. And only, if you can relate to that specifically, you can relate. But if we zoom out, we all have these tendencies to avoid, to distract from our moment-to-moment experience. We have these coping skills or mechanism or ways that we deal with life. In AA, we say life on life's terms. How can I deal with life on life's terms without using sugar? Like I think Trish said, life gets crappy and I eat crappy foods. So, it's like levels, right? It's like why, it does something for us. That's how it started. It's a coping skill, but then it turns on us and it doesn't work. And then we get diabetes, and then we get an amputation, and then we die of complications. Like, it happens so often, but it's normalized. Rachel said, ouch. April, best answer ever. Stephanie, food should nourish us. Kathleen, it's beautiful. Yeah. So, this is a multifaceted issue. And so, like I said, I zoomed way in. I shared very detailed, like, my own journey with this specific thing. But then we look at, the reasons behind it. There's physical reasons with sugar, if you've progressed to that point and your body becomes addicted. And, then there's the emotional side. And then there's the spiritual side. And I know maybe some of you have heard about the study they did with rats, Rat Park, where, they basically created drug addicted rats, or they had like two communities of rats, And the rats that had no community, stayed in their drug addiction. And the rats that had community and others around them did not become addicted. So, it's part of a bigger picture. Oh, that's a great question, Kathleen. How to lean into God, whatever that means for you, for nourishment. That's a beautiful question. And, that answer is going to be different for everyone because we all have our own beliefs, our own internal guidance. One of the clients that I work with, their higher power is the present moment, which I love, and is presence. And I'd say that's also for me as well. And so saying that to say, how can you deepen your relationship with this present moment? Because when we're at peace in the present moment, when we are fully present, then we can do whatever feels nourishing in the moment to connect with that source. And we won't need to distract or to embellish the moment in unhealthy ways that take us out of presence. And Lady Peacock, that's a great point about hospitals giving infant sugar water. And the thing is, breast milk, I think it's pretty high in natural sugars. So that speaks to another piece of this, which is our bodies are wired for it. Our bodies are wired for it. And we grow up in tribe and community where we celebrate with sugar. So that's also part of this. And Trish, what you're describing to me, that's the addictive cycle. I eat sugar, I feel bad, then the feeling bad makes me turn to more sugar to feel better, and it's a vicious cycle. So for those of you who asked about, what forms of sugar are acceptable, like fruit is always brought up in that discussion. And, it's an individual thing. And it depends on the person and their history. For me, I eat fruit. Some people find they can eat certain fruits and not certain fruits. Some people find they can't eat fruit at all. Rose mentioned dried fruit. And dried fruit, to me, that's very iffy because it's concentrated. So again, this is the sort of thing I work with when I work with my clients one-on-one, when I work with people getting off of sugar and creating a sugar-free life. All of these nuances come into play. So I do have a couple spaces open in my one-on-one sugar addiction coaching. So this is a very high-touch, bespoke, customized coaching program that's based on the person that I'm coaching. And I only have a few of those spots open. So if you're ready to stop and ready to make a change, feel free to send me a message here on Insight Timer, anywhere you can find me on my socials, website, etc. And let's have a conversation to see if we might be a good fit to work together. I don't work with just anybody, it depends. So if you want to apply, send me a message. And there's also, many avenues and ways. So trust your inner guidance wherever it's leading you, if it's to reach out to me or some other way. The important thing is that if you feel called to take an action based on this conversation, that you do that, whatever it may be for you. Yeah, and the thing is, Stephanie, and for me, once I got off of it and normalized my system, it was a steady, even keel. My body normalized itself, the insulin normalized how it released in my body, the leptin, which signals us that we're hungry, normalized itself, so I ate less. So that all happens as a result. Hi, Catherine. So earlier I didn't mention that. It's a great question. So there's been studies done that sugar substitutes and alternatives act like sugar in the brain in the same way. So they set off the same constellation, chemical cascade, if you will. So for me, I don't use them and I don't recommend them. There's no reason to sweeten anything, basically. There isn't a reason to sweeten anything. If somebody has sugar in their coffee, they can change their taste to where they don't need that anymore. So that's always a red flag to me. If anybody wants to use some sort of sweetener, it's not necessary. And there's a process of weaning off of that and changing your tastes. I'm sure if I were to have some sweet today, it would be, it would be way too sweet. And, I met with a client yesterday and their birthday is soon. And, I shared this story that I share often. My first sugar-free birthday. I went to my favorite cafe, as I did most days, and I mentioned it was my birthday, just whatever, in passing. And guess what? They brought me a piece of pie. It was I think it was a vegan, sugar-free sort of a thing. It wasn't something totally unhealthy. And for a moment, I considered it. I was like, There was the pressure of, oh my God, they brought me this free cake or whatever. I should have it, that obligation. And then there was the thought, well, it's my birthday just this once. Then I can just not have any more, I'll just go back to being sugar-free. But thank God I had enough recovery in me, I guess you could say, where after those thoughts, the next thought was, I don't want this birthday to be remembered for the birthday that I started eating sugar again after almost a year. I want to remember this birthday as my first sugar-free birthday where I didn't give in. And I know that I can't just have one. If I have this one piece of pie today, it might not be tomorrow, but soon I'll be back to having another, and then it'll be every night, and then I'll be stuck again in that horror of not being able to stop. So I played the tape through. And so I said, I'm sorry, I don't eat sugar. Thank you so much. I can't have that, but thank you. And they were like, oh, okay. It was fine. And now it's just second nature. No thanks, I don't eat sugar. Or just no thanks. And if somebody presses me, no, I don't eat sugar. And that's another thing I work with clients on, because there's a lot of societal pressure on that. And sometimes in the beginning it might be doctor's orders, or I have a medical condition, I can't have it, which is true. So these are the subtleties and the nuances in which, people come up against. So I really am so happy you all joined. If you haven't already, give me a follow here in Insight Timer. If this was helpful, give a donation if you'd like. I'm also double stream this on my YouTube channel. You can check out the replay there, as well as all my replays, and follow me there. Facebook, Instagram, check my website. And if you feel the heart's call to reach out, if today is like, I'm done and I want to do something different, send me a message. Yeah. Let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments. Let me know what you're leaving this conversation with. Yeah. April inspired. Awesome. You're welcome. And thank you all for celebrating this with me. I mean, it's changed my life. So I help others with it. And I know what it's like. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Sharon. Woo! Awesome, Trish. You're welcome, Catherine. Yeah, how many of you can relate? I'll start tomorrow. Oh my God. That old tired song that keeps playing. I'll start tomorrow. I had so many of those. I can so relate. Wonderful, April. And wishing you all so much love and peace and compassion. And if you're not at a place where you're ready to stop, you know, the invitation is stop beating yourself up. If you keep having, I'll start tomorrow, or today is day one, and then not following through. You know, your invitation is there is a place, there's your invitation to do your best to have some compassion for yourself, as hard as it may be. I had a session with a client this morning, and the mantra we came up with was, my suffering is a reason to love myself more, not less. My suffering is a reason to love myself more, not less. So same with this. If you're suffering and everything we've talked about, that's a reason to love yourself more, not less. You're welcome, Kusam. Thank you for joining. Yeah, totally, Sharon. And that's the things, you know, that I help people with one-on-one. And there's many resources. So follow your inner guidance on what that is for you. Yeah, totally. So I will be going live this weekend, as I do every weekend, for spiritual guidance with the cards. So we do tarot, oracle cards, and Reiki and ancestral clearing. So if that appeals to you, make sure you join in and follow me. You'll get a notification of that. And I will see you all then. Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.